Welcome back to the High Ticket AI Systems podcast. Today is going to be a really exciting episode for anyone in the agency space or the online space who has come from a door-to-door background. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome the one and only Mr. Roger Comstock. Roger, how are you doing today?
Hey, doing well. Thank you so much, Robbie. And I'd say anybody even outside of the door-to-door realm, those people especially, but also people in any type of sales position, account executives or inside sales or wherever they may be.
Yeah, awesome. Before I get too into it without knowing what I'm talking about, can you kind of go over what your offer is and who you're looking to help mostly?
Yeah, you bet. We help sales reps start and manage their own digital arbitrage companies. And that's generally meaningful for people that have been working for somebody else because they're paid usually a small percentage of commission, where in our case, we're teaching them to run their own business, where if they close a deal, they're collecting 100% of whatever comes in and it's recurring. So a good example would be, let's say Bob the plumber needs help finding customers. He's probably really good at fixing someone's toilet or sink, but he probably doesn't know how to acquire customers very well. He's probably just a good old boy. And so if one of my clients were to go to Bob the plumber and say, hey, let us help you, maybe my client charges Bob $3,000 per month and they can outsource that work to somebody to do the actual heavy lifting for Bob. And maybe that costs them $800. And so they could pocket $2,200 a month through digital arbitrage. And those people that will do the actual fulfillment for them, I call pocket size partners. That way Bob is helped, they're able to build a company, and then Bob gets more customers.
Okay, I see. And what types of, you keep saying digital arbitrage. Can you break that down? What businesses are you helping these guys set up?
Yeah, really good question. So arbitrage, what I mean by that is there are a lot of home service companies or just service companies in general across the country that are small to medium sized. And a lot of these people have studied a particular skill set that they're very good at, but then they may not be so great on the business side. So the arbitrage piece would be, let's say I've got a client named Jim. Jim may go to a guy named Steve, who's an HVAC owner, and Steve needs help showing up online, right? Maybe with search engine optimization, or he wants to generate leads. And so my client Jim may help Steve, and Steve will pay Jim for that help since there's value that's being created there. And Jim will collect a recurring amount each month. And the arbitrage piece is that Jim isn't actually having to do that work. And that's meaningful. So it's kind of like digital general contracting. So Jim will get paid each month, and then Jim finds a contractor to do the work for Steve. And that way there's kind of this symbiotic relationship between Steve, the HVAC guy, Jim, the owner, and then these pocket-sized partners that are actually doing the work for Steve, the HVAC guy. So the arbitrage is the price that's being charged to Steve, and then the cost being subtracted out of that from the pocket-sized partners and what's being kept. That's the arbitrage piece for the person running the business.
Okay. And can you help me understand? I come from a door-to-door background
Cool.
in solar. Yeah, I worked in solar for about 3 years.
Rob.
It's where
That's cool.
learned all about, just general sales and building rapport.
Yeah.
If I was a solar rep and I came to you, what would you do to help me, I guess, start using my skills and my services to move away from the door-to-door aspect and move to something more online?
Yeah, really good question. I'll use an example of one of my actual clients. His name's Jeremy Reeves, super cool guy. He was a solar sales rep and he'd been out on the doors for a long time, but he wanted to spend more time with his sweetheart and his family. He was getting ready to have a baby. And so he wanted to kind of leave the doors behind. So he got into the program and learned how he could create an agency that was nationwide, where he could create recurring income and be paid all of the money instead of collecting a commission. So when somebody is selling solar, what's generally happening is there's an owner of that solar business who wants those sales reps to close a lot of deals because it pads their pocket. And the solar sales reps will collect a commission. They'll get paid for closing a deal, but it's not nearly as much as what will be made by the company. And that's how the owners of that business are able to increase the asset value of the business as well as their own net worths. So ideally for me, what I want is husbands and fathers spending more time with their sweethearts and their kids, and they're able to build something that's their very own, that they own 100% of. So that way, if you were learning this stuff, every deal you closed would increase your net worth and increase the amount of money coming into your bank account every single month instead of a one-time payout. I've had a bunch of family members that have been in solar, and I sold alarms, but when when they close a deal, you get paid on it once, and there's kind of this sales roller coaster that generally happens in any sort of door-to-door situation or really inside sales, right? Where you can have these really high highs where you're closing a bunch and you feel amazing.
Yep.
And then there's those really low lows where you feel like, man, I got to get a deal or else I'm not going to be able to do the things that I need to do. And so ideally, one of the major opportunities to be able to solve that is creating consistency in revenue coming in each month or money coming into your bank account each month instead of the high months and the low months. And that's done through recurring revenue.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, props to you for being someone who has figured that out and being someone that helps those reps make that transition. Because I know a lot of people, that's exactly the reason I exited. The reason I left the solar game was because it was just too much time out there, and I wanted something where I could be at home more and, start to see, like you said, recurring revenue on work. That's why I got into the agency space. So that's awesome that you're bringing people who are stuck in that cycle and that lifestyle over to, I guess, a better way of living, a better way of doing business. Give the audience more of a reason to listen to you. What should people know about how you do things that shows that you understand what you're talking about more than whatever other guru out there who's saying, hey, come work in this agency, or hey, start this online business?
Yeah, good question. If people are not focused on optimizing their time or spending more time with their families, then I'm not someone they should listen to. So if somebody is wanting to be able to create an experience where they can be with their kids, never miss like a ball game or a dance recital, go on trips and feel like they can be present instead of worrying about being on calls or knocking doors, then I am someone that can help them with that. I teach a framework that's been used by myself, and I've generated millions of dollars online. It's been a huge blessing for our family. But the framework works very, very well for time optimization and revenue creation. And that's number one, we find people who need help where there's a value gap. And again, that's generally those home service companies where they're good at something but don't know how to do something else. That's a great person to focus on. Number two, we want to get paid first before money goes out. So in a lot of experiences, or when it comes to entrepreneurship, people get into some pretty big trouble when they either go raise a bunch of venture capital or private equity or take out large amounts of debt. So for example, someone may say, I'm going to start an HVAC company, and maybe they go take out 250 grand to either buy a business or go get their own equipment. And they're kind of rolling the dice, hoping that it works. Ideally, even though I'm an entrepreneur, what I love to focus on is risk mitigation and optimizing your upside financially. And so using the framework that I teach, I call it the $0 framework, that people are finding individuals who need help and getting paid first before money goes out. So the third step would be automating or outsourcing the work and then repeating. So find people who need help, get paid first, outsource or automate, and then just repeat that to be able to stack recurring income. And one of the things that's interesting is that people generally chase money, but it's something that money's just a tool, right? It's something that it can be used for really good things, creating memories and building relationships and all of the great things that it does. It can be used for bad things, but it doesn't make somebody inherently happy. I think what makes people truly happy is relationships and putting first things first.
Yeah.
And so what I always try to help people understand is that you want to focus on optimizing your time, because that's an account that you just never know how much you have left in. You can look at your bank and see, okay, here's how much money I have in that account and how much I can spend or invest or what I have to use. But as far as how much time we have left, we don't ever really know, right? And so it really is worth our while to optimize for that piece of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really cool way that you put that, about I can look at my bank account and know how much money I have in it, my time. So that's a really unique perspective that you were sharing. I've never thought about it as far as you have your bank that you can check at any time and see how much money you have. You can't check your time bank, and you could have 1 day left, you could have 45 years left. That's a really unique perspective. And I'd have to imagine that carries you quite a long way as far as your marketing and your sales when you are coming at it as a perspective of you seem like you want to give before you want to ask.
Yeah. And along those lines, I think it requires a perspective shift, because we're taught constantly to focus on money. And money is a good thing, but it's just a means to an end, right? And so if somebody had, for example, there's people in this world with all of the money they could ever want that are very, very, very unhappy people, right?
Hmm.
And so what's cool is that money again is just a tool. It's like a pen, right? It's something that can help us to serve. It can help us to be able to create memories and do meaningful things. But like you said, you could have a day left or 45 years. And one of the things that can help people find more fulfillment or meaning in their life is considering what their last day on earth would look like, and the people they'd want around them. And so if they're focused on relationships, if they're focused on things that are meaningful, then they'll be able to look back without regrets. If they were only focused on the creation of money and padding their bank account, I think they'll get to the end of their lives wanting, feeling like they wish they could have invested more time into things that were actually meaningful.
Yeah, I really like that. With your agency, I'm assuming it's pretty low maintenance, or you tell me, how many people are working under the hood for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, with what I do right now, with this education program, with how I consult, I use a lot of AI or automations. Before I started my own company about a decade ago, I was a business intelligence analyst. So, doing really nerdy things. I was programming in JavaScript and automating. And now there's great tools that you can automate without coding, right? But so I have coaches that work with me that serve the students. And then when we have really large campaigns that are being run, will bring on sales reps to help close, and that's about it. Other than that, everything's automated, which is really, really nice. Even to give an example, I had a big team of setters in Dallas, Texas that I was paying thousands of dollars a month to. And with voice AI agents, I now just utilize a voice AI setter and was able to replace that group, coupled with kind of sequencing and workflows that allow people to book appointments with us through ads. And so it makes it really nice. Our overhead is very low, margins are very high, and we're able to serve people in a way that creates a very meaningful lifestyle for them.
Awesome. You touched on ads. Is that the main way that you guys are getting your clients?
I find my clients in a lot of different ways. I think it would not serve someone to feel like there's only one way to be able to acquire customers effectively. I think when people say things like cold calling is dead, that's never true. My own agency closed over 200 locations through cold calls. I think ads work very, very well, and they're a primary source for us to find through Instagram and Facebook. There's also really meaningful tools, like we did $44,000 in cash collected in 5 days on LinkedIn through a tool called Dripify, which is super great. So you can find people that way as well. I don't know how much of that last piece was caught, but I think there's a lot of great ways to find. And I almost think, like, I grew up fishing with my dad, and I think of all of these different ways to find kind of like lakes that you can fish in, and there's different fish in those lakes, and so you want to be able, if you're trying to catch a certain kind of fish, you're going to use a certain kind of bait, and you can go to that lake to find them. So LinkedIn is a really, really great place for us to find people where we can serve them and we can help them spend more time with their families. And that's our main goal. I think sales is just service. And so one of the things that I think resonates well with people that may be listening to this is that if you have the best apples in the world, but you're trying to sell them in the middle of nowhere at your orchard, it's going to be tough to sell out. But if you take those really beautiful ripe apples to a farmer's market where your target audience already is, it'll be easy to sell out of them, right? And so you want to take your product to where your customers already are. And so for us, the way we were able to do 44 grand in 5 days on LinkedIn was through just targeting people that really wanted help, people that need more time with their families, and there's some automation that's built out. And so what's nice right now, we live in a world where we can have this healthy balance between human interaction and autonomous sequencing that allows us for efficiencies within the business. One of the hiccups that I think are generally that's being exposed right now is people trying to automate everything, right? So for example,
Right.
just trying to say, hey, I want AI to do everything for me. I want them to set, I want them to close, I want them to send my emails, all of that stuff. And people catch on to that very quickly. They can tell if they're talking to a robot or a
Definitely.
person, and it feels very ingenuine. And so I think there has to be, if people want to find success, they can't take the work piece out of it. If somebody wants a successful company, they still have to work, but they can pair their skill set with AI to create more efficiencies within the business and ways to be able to get rid of bottlenecks. And that creates meaningful systems and processes that allow people to grow.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think over the last couple of years with the AI boom, you've gotten all these AI agencies emerging that just say, hey, we use AI to do everything. When I don't think the emergence of AI hasn't created any new problems. The way that we solve problems still needs to be the same. We just have AI to give us a little bit of help doing the things that we'd typically have to hire out someone for. So I think that's a big
Yeah,
misconception that a lot of people coming into the AI space or trying to start an AI agency have, like, oh, I'm just going to use Claude and it's going to take care of everything.
I think you're exactly right. I think you're exactly right. And I think people crave connection, and so one of the best ways so here's a good example for people listening that's really cool. Like I've got a lead source that only cost me about $300 per month, but it's produced thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars per month in return, simply because it's pairing automation with actual human interaction. So what I'll have it do is create a conversation and initiate it, get somebody kind of hooked, and then we can jump in and answer, right? And say, hey, well, that sounds great. Let's get you on the calendar. And that way there's a really great kind of symbiotic relationship between the human side and the AI side, or the autonomous side, workflows that build a process that creates really high returns, better returns than I could get in any investment vehicle like the stock market or crypto or real estate, right? Business, I think, is the best place to be able to get returns if people are able to pull certain levers that can help them that way.
Yeah, exactly. Talk to me about maximizing your returns. So you work with people who come from an array of different backgrounds, and probably a vast difference in experience levels too. What's like your pricing model? What do you find works the most with your agency?
Yeah, good question. So I think one of the things that's interesting or helpful, like in what I do right now in my coaching or training, it's important to be able to stay up with what's happening in the market, right? Economically, I think when people get complacent, that's how they get moved out of the market very quickly. And so being able to understand what engine is driving revenue generation and not getting caught up in the thick of thin things, but focusing on dollars through the door and things that actually move the needle will inevitably help someone to be successful. And what I mean by that is, for a long time, we utilized third-party lenders as a way to be able to create opportunities for people who didn't have all of the money up front to be able to get into the program. So we charge anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 generally for students to get in. We've charged up to 30 grand. And some people have that liquid. A lot of people don't have that. And so the third party financing was helpful. But one of the things that I realized was that those companies that were providing the financing obviously wanted the recurring. That's why they were doing it. They wanted to be able to provide cash and then collect interest. And so one of the things that I've done instead on my side is I've created my own in-house financing arm of the business. And that's allowed me to basically be my own bank. And so it's created because I've always been a fan of recurring income and recurring revenue because it creates peace of mind. So when I was running my own digital arbitrage agency, it was all focused on creating recurring. When I got into the world of teaching people how to do it, a lot of the capital that was coming in was upfront payments, but I missed the recurring side. And so over the past several years, what I've done is built the recurring side out. So instead of, if somebody is wanting to get into the program at say $12,000, we may have them put down $5,000, and then I can finance them in-house at $300 a month without interest and without any credit check or going through a third party. But I've got them contractually in an agreement to pay $300 per month, which I can stack in recurring. So
Yeah.
kind of like a bank, but I don't have to lend on a hard asset, which is also, it mitigates my own risk while helping provide a lot of value, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think when you're offering payment plans like that, essentially, you are taking on some of the risk yourself as the owner, but you are effectively putting your money where your mouth is, and you are saying to your clients or your prospects, hey, if this doesn't work for you, you're not going to keep paying me, and I'm going to lose out on profits. Obviously, I have a product that works, or else I wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, well, and I think it's important for any business owners or people considering business to make sure they're making sound business decisions. And so the way that I have it set up is a contractual agreement. So if somebody is going to be financed in-house, they're tied contractually to pay the total amount. So they could either pay, as an example, like $9,000 up front for a package, or maybe I finance them at $12,000 with a payment plan. They put $5,000 down, and then it's $300 per month. and they'll be required to pay that off. They can pay it off early if they want, if that's an option that they choose to take advantage of. But what's nice about the situation is that it creates recurring while also helping them recognize that it's interesting. One of the things I've found, you probably found it too, but when people pay for things, they value them a lot more. And so people that are invested in learning a particular skill set, they tend to do very, very well because they recognize that they're having to put hard-earned money into learning a skill. It's kind of like if somebody's parents are paying for their college, they may not take it as seriously as if they have to
Yeah.
do the work and pay for their own college education. They'll end up getting better grades and performing better and getting placed in better positions if they're willing to actually, like you said, put their money where their mouth is and put some skin in the game. And so us charging what we charge allows us to be able to really serve them and have coaches working with them one-on-one, but it also puts them in a place where they have to be willing to do the work to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. I've worked on a variety of different agencies and offers up until this point, and one thing that I've noticed repeatedly is that all the funnels who start with the free course or some free asset that someone has to go through until they get to the next stage of funnel, they're the worst type of buyers, the worst type of customers. They're the people who want to expect and expect and expect before they have to give anything. And then two, they just have the highest number of chargebacks and the highest number of people who they'll get onboarded today, and then you don't hear from them for 2 weeks, and they hit you up in the group chat and say, "Hey, what's the plan?"
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And part of that, I mean, for those listening too, is just targeting, right? Being able, it's kind of like if you go fishing in a lake, not considering how just genuinely good people are. When we're talking about lead quality in and of itself, in certain lakes, there might be carp, there might be walleye or bass or salmon or trout or whatever it is that somebody's trying to catch. And so what's important is that you have the right bait on the hook to be able to catch the fish you want to catch. And so if somebody's looking for a high ticket buyer, someone that has money, they have to be careful about how they're positioning their offer in order to catch that type of fish. If they've got the wrong bait on the hook to bring in carp, then they're going to be really frustrated when they're spending ad money and they're bringing in the wrong fit, right? Like you said, the people that are a pain to work with, they don't have money to spend. It's so much more fun to work with people that say, "Hey, I recognize I'm going to get a lot out of this. Here's the money. Let's do it." Than people that are, difficult to serve.
Definitely. Yeah. Can we switch gears here? Just keeping an eye on time. Can you take me back to before you launched this current agency? What were you doing before, and what was it that gave you the idea to want to make this agency?
So when you say agency, are you talking about like my training program?
Yeah, sorry if you
Okay.
call it, I guess,
Yeah,
coaching
yeah,
program.
that's perfect. So I got my MBA, which I don't recommend anybody do. So if you're listening right now, if you're in an MBA program, that's great, and I hope it goes well. I did the same thing. I don't feel like there was enough value created to justify the cost of that education. I think it was very hypothetical and theoretical instead of application based, right? Actually getting rubber to hit the road. And so what I ended up doing after my MBA is thinking, man, well, I want to be able to be free, right? I had this end in mind in my life, which was I want to be able to spend time with my future family and kids. And I knew I needed to create something that would allow me to do that. So I built an agency where I was selling things like websites or software. It was in a lot of ways a SaaS company and marketing services and then outsourcing the work. And I found it worked very, very, very well. I started my own agency. I really, really enjoyed it, and it created a meaningful lifestyle. It allows us to be free. It allowed me and my wife to be able to kind of do what we wanted to do and travel. And so I wanted to start teaching people how to do that. And that's why I started this company about 5 years ago. And it kind of started by accident. I was at my office one day and I put a post out on Facebook basically saying, "Hey, this is what I've done. And is anybody interested in kind of learning how to do it?" And I had a lot of people say they were. And so I created a little boot camp, and then it ended up just blowing up, which was great. It went very, very well. It started as a 6-week kind of thing. And then we made it go online and turned into what it is today, which is great. We've got over 1,400 clients across the country, and it's been super fun to be able to serve people like this,
Amazing.
help them spend more time with their families.
Yeah. Where are you guys based?
The headquarters of the company is in Scottsdale, Arizona. Yeah, which is great. I live in Utah, but the headquarters down in Scottsdale.
Okay, nice. Yeah, our headquarters is in Utah too. I'm over here in California.
Cool.
Roger, what's one thing or misconception that is a part of your space that you argue with a competitor about?
I think I don't like the idea of like get rich quick. I don't believe that. I think that I think slow creates speed, as ironic or paradoxical as that sounds. I think if people slow down, they'll speed up. So the world teaches this message of you can have everything now. We live in a world where you look something up on Claude or Gemini or Chat GPT and you get answers in seconds. But the laws of nature, and I believe in God, are that if you plant a peach seed, you're not going to get the peach tree the next day. You're going to have to water it and make sure that you take care of it and provide what it needs to be able to grow. And a business is very much the same. I think people need to understand correctly with the right expectations that they can build something very special and meaningful for their family, something that allows them to be truly free. But it's not this, hey, pay us to do this and all of a sudden you're going to be making millions, right? It's going to require learning. It's going to require growth, getting uncomfortable, being willing to do things that you haven't done in the past. And what's nice is we always want to make sure people have the help that they need, right? We want to provide hand-holding and make sure they don't have to worry about anything and answer questions and a team that knows what they're doing, but recognizing that it requires a willingness to learn and a willingness to apply. And if those two things are present, then it would be impossible for anybody to find anything but success. And I think that's the way it goes in any aspect of our lives, right? In relationships, if we're willing to learn and apply ourselves, we're going to have great relationships. In business, if we're willing to learn and apply ourselves, we're going to have great businesses. It's awesome. And what I love about business too is that you get to create outcomes based off of your willingness to be able to do some work. Where when you put money into the stock market, you're banking on somebody else, right? You're hoping somebody else does a good job. Or one of the things that's great about entrepreneurship and business is that you control a lot of the variables and the outcomes, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think any type of entrepreneurial endeavor has to come from a place of betting on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah,
Anybody who's
absolutely.
too afraid to take that step or look behind what's on the other side of that fear, they're not going to get the rewards that the entrepreneur who says, hey, I'm going to take this step. I don't know what's over here, but I'm going to take this step. I'm going to keep walking this way. I'm curious, do you feel like your stance on, I guess we'll call it looking for the easy way comes from business school? Do you feel like business school is a way that some people think is like, oh, I can just pay this money and I'll get this degree and I'll have the next step lined up perfectly for me?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I think I was one of those people. I thought, okay, if I get an MBA, everything's just going to be easy and I'll be able to come out of the program and have job offers all over the place. And I learned very quickly that when I graduated, people wouldn't even give you a second look, right? Like if you wanted to be able to have something meaningful, you needed to be willing to, in my opinion, I feel like God plays a major role in it. So I made a decision to partner up with God and make him part of my business. But going to work and recognizing I can create value, that's what creates money, right? Being able to provide value in your own way. If you're banking on like, okay, if I get my MBA, now I'm going to have all this wealth, it's not that way. There's still going to be a lot of work. And in my opinion, the education system basically is like a cookie cutter, trying to get people into the corporate world to climb a corporate ladder and work a 9 to 5. My idea of fulfillment is being able to spend time with my son, my wife, do fun things, travel, golf. And so in order to do that, I'm going to have to live my life a little bit differently than people that are on paths where they're being kind of pushed into this corporate system.
Yeah, absolutely. What advice would you have other than don't go to business school? What advice would you give to a young entrepreneur who is trying to get into starting a business, whether it's a training like you have or an agency that helps out other businesses?
Yeah, good question. I would say fail and fail and fail and fail, and it's okay to fail. That's another thing that is paradoxical to what the world teaches. The world teaches if you fail, then you're wrong, right? But what life is about is failing. It's about being willing to take a step into something you don't understand and say, wow, that didn't go that well, so I'm going to course correct, right? And take another step, and that didn't go like I thought, so I'm going to course correct again. And failing is how we become, right? No one becomes anything that they want to become without being willing to become wildly uncomfortable. And that's something that's the number one piece of advice I would give to someone is just be willing to struggle, be willing to fail, and recognize that it's okay. I think congratulate yourself for the failures that you've had along the way and recognize that they're all stepping stones to the success that you want to be able to experience. Maybe one other piece would be that a lot of people constantly have this elusive view or idea of what happiness is. They think that if they set a goal and if they can hit it, then they'll finally be happy. But that's a recipe for misery, because once they hit the goal, they're just going to move the goalpost back. And so happiness will be something they never actually achieve. It'll be something they're always chasing. So a much better way to live life and a fulfilling experience is to enjoy the process of getting to that goal and celebrating it when you hit it, but then setting another goal and enjoying the process of becoming along the way. And what I would relate that to is when you're on a beautiful hike here in Utah, there's a mountain called Mount Timpanogos, and it's gorgeous, very, very pretty waterfalls and wildflowers and wildlife. And if you only made that hike to get to the top's beautiful, but most of the views are along the way, right? Being able to stop and see all of these beautiful animals and these ponds and rivers, and it's the journey there that makes it so worth it once you get there. And that's really what life is all about too, stopping to smell the roses and slowing down a little bit.
Yeah, brother. Amazing. I love your philosophy, man. I want to end looking forward over the next 12 months in terms of dreams, visions, numbers. What's the number one thing that you're excited about, or the number one thing that you're trying to accomplish?
That's a good question. For me, it's just always about time. It really is. So being able to help other people spend more time with their families, I think that's great. I'm able to spend mornings with my son, lunches with my son, evenings with my son and my sweetheart. And so it's fun to be able to do that, and helping other people to do the same thing is very fulfilling for me. So continuing to do that over the next year is awesome.
Amazing, man. Amen. Cool, man. Well, this has been a blast. I really appreciated hearing a lot of your perspectives. Before we head out, would you want to give yourself a shameless plug to your podcast? Tell people what that's about, what you guys talk about on there, where they can find you.
Yeah, I had my own podcast for a while, and now I do one with my sister. It's called the Becoming Podcast. You can find us on Spotify or Apple. My name's Roger Comstock. Her name's Kylie. But as far as learning more about what I do, you can either go to $0startup.com, ditchthedoors.com, or perpetualpayouts.com. Those are the Ditch the Doors and Perpetual Payouts are different campaigns for the same company, $0 Startup.
Amazing, brother. All right, Roger, it was great having you on. Hopefully, we'll have you on back in the next 6 to 12 months and catch up, see where things are at for you. And yeah, that's it for now, audience. I will catch you guys next time.